When Hollywood royalty meets actual royalty, and neither backs down. What was meant to be a routine late-night interview turned into one of the most explosive television moments ever captured. A clash of egos, agendas, and unscripted confrontation that ended with security, on set, and a guest escorted off stage. Tonight we're diving into the moment that hijacked headlines and rewrote the playbook for celebrity interviews. So hit that subscribe button and drop a comment, because this story only gets more intense with every second, and trust me, you'll have thoughts. The scene: Jimmy Kimmel Live. The studio buzzed with the usual pre-show energy, crew adjusting lights, sound techs running final checks, and a full audience settled in, completely unaware they were about to witness live TV history. Enter Meghan Markle. Poised, polished, and powerful, she arrived for what should have been a simple promotional stop, part of her latest media tour supporting a new charitable initiative. Jimmy Kimmel, a seasoned late-night veteran, had his notes: softballs, feel-good questions, and the usual crowd-pleasing banter. But what no one realized, not even Jimmy, was that Meghan came armed with her own narrative, and from the first question, it was clear this wouldn't go the way anyone expected. As the applause faded and Jimmy flashed his trademark grin, he welcomed Meghan back with his usual charm. "We're here with Meghan Markle. It's great to have you here. How are you doing?" "Wonderfully, Jimmy. Thank you for having me," she replied, her smile gracious, but carrying something else. A sharpness Jimmy noticed immediately. Then came the pivot. "I know you're here to talk about your foundation, which sounds incredible," Jimmy said, leaning in slightly. "But I've got to ask, how's life outside of royal protocol? You can speak your mind now, right? No more advisors signing off on every word?" A chuckle rippled through the audience. The question seemed harmless, but Meghan's smile shifted. "Well, Jimmy," she began, still composed but pointed, "there's a misconception that I couldn't speak my mind before. I've always stood up for what I believe in, regardless of the institution I was part of." Jimmy tried to recover, tossing out a laugh. Right, but there's gotta be some more freedom now. I mean, could you have done a show like this and really told us what you thought?" That's when the tension snapped into focus. "I'm curious," Meghan said coolly. "What exactly do you think I'm supposed to tell you now that I couldn't before? What are you hoping I'll say?" The audience chuckled, thinking it was still banter. Jimmy knew better. "I'm not hoping for anything," he said carefully. "I just think people are curious about your experience, about what it was really like behind the scenes." Meghan's tone hardened. "You mean like how I was treated by the media? Or how narratives were pushed that had nothing to do with reality? Is that the behind the scenes you're fishing for?" Now the room had shifted. The audience felt it. The tension. The defiance. Jimmy tried again. "Look, I think people just want your perspective. You've been under more public scrutiny than most. How do you deal with that?" Meghan leaned in. "How do I deal with scrutiny? I deal with it by telling the truth, even when people don't want to hear it. I deal with it by refusing to be silenced by institutions or individuals who think they can dictate the story of my life." The crowd was no longer laughing. They were locked in. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a confrontation. Jimmy shifted in his seat. "Absolutely," he replied, his voice carefully measured now. "And I think that's admirable. But the damage, or the shift, was done. What followed would spiral into one of the most dissected TV moments in years. From social media firestorms to think pieces on power, gender, and the media, the fallout was seismic, and this was just the beginning. But sometimes when you're in the public eye, Jimmy said, choosing his words carefully, you have to accept that people are going to have opinions, and not all of them are going to be favorable. I mean, that's just part of the territory, right? Megan's eyes flashed. There was a brief pause, long enough for the audience to feel the shift, and Jimmy instantly wondered if he'd just crossed a line. Part of the territory? Meghan repeated, her tone icy. Jimmy, are you suggesting that the treatment I received, the racist undertones, the relentless character assassinations, the twisting of my words and intentions, that I should have just accepted all of that as the cost of fame? The studio air grew noticeably heavier. What had started as a late-night interview now felt more like a reckoning. The chuckles had stopped. Even the camera operators paused. Jimmy's throat tightened, but he kept his voice even. No, I'm not suggesting that at all. Racism is never acceptable. If that's what you experienced, then that's awful. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, how do you separate the unfair treatment from what might be legitimate criticism? Meghan sat up straighter. Her voice, when it came, had risen a notch, her restraint visibly thinning. Legitimate criticism? She echoed, incredulous. Jimmy, what exactly do you think people should be legitimately criticizing me for? For marrying someone I love? For trying to bring relevance to a centuries-old institution? For speaking about mental health? About inequality? Jimmy could feel himself slipping out of control. His usual tricks, humor, detours, deflection, weren't going to save him here. He glanced off camera. His producers looked panicked. I'm not saying they should criticize you, he said. I just think some people struggle with how public figures manage the line between private feelings and public duties, especially in something as traditional as the royal family. There are expectations, right? That some things stay behind closed doors? Behind closed doors, Meghan repeated slowly, like the words tasted bitter. You mean suffer in silence when the very institution that's supposed to protect you doesn't? When it actively undermines you, when the private channels you're supposed to use are just a black hole? Jimmy swallowed. Every person in that studio could feel the interview sliding into something far more raw than anyone had planned. I just think, he said carefully, sometimes working within the system, even when it's flawed, can be more productive than blowing everything up in public. Meghan laughed, sharp and cold. Working within the system, she said. Jimmy, that system leaked lies about me to the tabloids, refused to defend me, and questioned my children's identity before they were even born. Tell me, what part of that was I supposed to cooperate with? The room fell completely silent now. Jimmy's producers were waving behind the cameras. Cut to commercial? Pivot to a lighter topic? He had no idea what move to make. Nothing about. This moment was familiar. Look, Meghan, he said, no longer hiding his discomfort. I think we're just getting into some heavy territory. I wasn't trying to attack you or minimize anything. I was just hoping to have an honest conversation. Meghan leaned forward. Her voice was low, steady, but laced with fury. A conversation? Jimmy, I came on this show to talk about my charity work, and instead you've spent the entire time implying I mishandled my own mistreatment, that I brought this on myself. Jimmy's frustration flared. That's not what I was doing. I'm trying to ask the questions that people are wondering about, trying to understand your experience, but it feels like I can't even ask without being accused of something. Asking questions isn't the problem, Meghan shot back, and for the first time her composure visibly cracked. But framing them as if I owe an explanation for being mistreated, as if my trauma should have been more palatable or more politely delivered for public consumption, that is the problem. He had completely underestimated. The way you're asking them, Meghan continued, her voice steady but simmering. The assumptions baked into every question. The implication that I should have just gritted my teeth, smiled and endured. Abuse for the sake of decorum, that's what's offensive. The tension in the studio thickened. Jimmy could see audience members shifting in their seats, their unease mirrored by the production crew, frozen just off stage. Every instinct told him to crack a joke, to relieve the pressure. But something deeper told him that any levity now would be fatal. I never said you should have accepted being treated badly, Jimmy replied, his voice more defensive than he intended. But there's a line between standing up for yourself and, well, airing deeply personal family matters on global television. Some might see that as going too far. Some might see that as going too far, Meghan echoed, her gaze sharp. Is that your opinion, Jimmy? Do you think I went too far by speaking the truth when no one else would? When the official version was full of lies? Jimmy felt the walls closing in. If he said yes, he'd alienate her, and likely his audience. If he said no, he'd contradict everything he'd just implied. I think, he said slowly, trying to find a middle ground that didn't exist. Everyone has the right to tell their story, but when you're part of a family, especially a royal one, how you tell that story has consequences. Consequences, Meghan said, her voice darkening. Are you threatening me now? Is that what this is? Are you saying I should have expected retaliation for speaking up? A ripple of gasps rolled through the studio. Jimmy froze. No, I'm not threatening anyone, he said quickly, panicked. I'm just saying. Look, when you go public with something so personal, it changes the dynamic. Actions have reactions. That's just reality. Actions have reactions, Meghan repeated, nodding slowly. So when I was being hounded by the press with racist headlines, when I was nearly suicidal, when my kids were being targeted before they were even born, that was the action. And defending myself publicly, that was the reaction you think I should have reconsidered? Jimmy could feel the sweat gathering under his collar. The silence from the audience was suffocating. I'm not saying you shouldn't have defended yourself, he insisted. I'm saying maybe there were other ways. Less explosive ways to handle it. Explosive? Meghan said, her voice like a blade through the air. You think telling the truth about racism and mental health was explosive? You think a woman refusing to suffer in silence is going nuclear? He looked out at the crowd, faces unreadable, some stunned, others narrowing their eyes at him. The lights were suddenly blinding. No, I didn't say it was an overreaction, he said, scrambling. Just that family matters are often better dealt with privately. Family matters, she repeated, each syllable cold. Jimmy, this wasn't a fight over who brings what to Christmas dinner. This was about systemic racism, about my mental health, about the safety of my children. And you're telling me those are family matters I should have tucked neatly away? The murmurs in the audience were growing now, whispers building into low conversation. His producers were making frantic, conflicting gestures, some signaling to cut, others gesturing to let it play out. I think, Jimmy said, strained, that in some situations, Using private channels can be more productive than going public. Meghan let out a short, humorless laugh. Private channels? Jimmy, the private channels were the problem. They didn't just fail me. They protected everyone else at my expense. So tell me again, what should I have done when silence became complicity? He had nothing. He was out of road, out of finesse. Every turn he took only pushed him further into a moral quicksand he couldn't charm his way out of. I'm not denying your pain, Jimmy said, more softly now. I guess I didn't realize how deep it all went. No, Meghan said, her voice calm but cutting. You didn't. And that's part of the problem. There was no applause, no laughter, just the hum of the lights, the silent tension of a crowd who had witnessed something far more real than late-night television was ever meant to be. He had completely misjudged her. The woman now sitting across from him was a far cry from the composed, diplomatic figure who had confidently walked onto his stage just 20 minutes earlier. This version of Meghan Markle was unfiltered, fierce, and utterly relentless in her pursuit of what she clearly believed was justice. I think we need to take a step back here, Jimmy said, his voice tight with unease. This conversation has gotten way more intense than either of us probably intended. Has it, Jimmy? Meghan's tone was razor-sharp. Or is this exactly the conversation you wanted to have? Did you invite me here expecting I'd just smile and nod while you dissected every decision I've made to protect myself and my family? Jimmy felt something crack inside him. He had built a career on being affable, on putting even the most challenging guests at ease. But here was someone who seemed determined to cast him as the villain, no matter what he said. And it was pushing him toward a breaking point. You know what, Meghan? His voice was colder now, the usual charm stripped away. I brought you on because I thought you wanted an honest conversation. But instead, you've turned every question into a personal attack. Frankly, I'm getting tired of being treated like some racist monster for asking standard interview questions. The audience gasped, audible, stunned. Jimmy Kimmel, the consummate professional, had just lost his composure on live television. Meghan's eyes gleamed with something that looked unsettlingly like satisfaction, as if Jimmy had finally shown the very thing she'd been waiting for. Standard interview questions? She said, voice low and dangerous. Jimmy, tell me, what's standard about questioning why someone spoke out about abuse? About suggesting a woman should have just handled racism and mental health issues more delicately? I never questioned your right to speak. Jimmy shot back, his professional mask completely gone. I questioned how you did it. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and burning everything down in the process. Burning everything down? Meghan's voice rose, her control slipping for the first time. Jimmy, what exactly do you think I destroyed by telling the truth about my life? You destroyed any chance of reconciliation with your family, he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. You made it impossible for anyone to be close to you without taking a side. You turned private pain into public entertainment. The room fell deathly silent. Even the cameras seemed to freeze as the weight of what he'd just said settled over the studio. Meghan stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. A cold, steely transformation that made his stomach drop. Public entertainment, she repeated slowly. So that's what you think my pain is? Jimmy felt the ground beneath him giving way, but he couldn't stop. I think you've built a career on your grievances, he said, barely hearing himself. And I think some people are getting tired of hearing how hard your life's been, especially when you've had privileges most could never imagine, the audience erupted. Gasps, shouts. Some people stood, others shouted back. Jimmy's producers were on their feet, scrambling to contain what was quickly turning into a PR catastrophe. Meghan stood slowly, movements composed but charged with rage. "Let me get this straight," she said. "You think that because I've had privilege, I should have accepted racism silently? That marrying into royalty means I forfeited my right to speak about discrimination?" Jimmy was on his feet too now, all pretense of diplomacy gone. "Think when you have a platform, you have a responsibility to use it constructively," he said, "not to settle personal scores and make everyone else look bad." Make everyone else look bad? Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "I didn't make anyone look bad, Jimmy. I told the truth. If that truth is ugly, maybe they should look in the mirror before blaming me." "The truth according to you," Jimmy snapped. "Your version, your interpretation. There are always two sides to every story." Meghan's expression turned to stone. "Two sides?" she said coldly. "What's the other side of racism, Jimmy? What's the other side of someone being driven to suicidal thoughts? Please, enlighten me." Jimmy felt himself at the edge of a precipice and jumped. "Maybe the other side," he said, "is that sometimes criticism is deserved. And maybe, not always, but sometimes, playing the race card isn't the right response." The words hit like a grenade. The audience exploded. Boos, shouts, protests. Some stormed out. Others shouted back in Meghan's defense. The studio was now a battlefield. Meghan's face was unreadable. Her voice was low, but carried across the room. "Playing the race card," she said. "Jimmy Kimmel just told a biracial woman she was playing the race card for talking about racism." Jimmy's face went pale. He opened his mouth to walk it back, but it was too late. "That's not what I meant," he began. "That's exactly what you meant," Meghan cut in. "And now everyone knows exactly who you are." She stepped away from her chair with her head high. The storm swirled around her, but she remained composed. "I came here to talk about charity, about making a difference," she said. "Instead, you used your platform to question my motives, deny my experience, and diminish my pain. Meghan, please." Jimmy tried again. "Let's just calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down." Her voice sliced through the noise like a blade. "You just invalidated every racist experience I've ever had. And now you want me to be the one to de-escalate?" Security was already moving toward the stage, not because she posed any threat, but because the entire room was coming apart. "I don't need an escort," she said firmly, seeing them approach. "I can walk myself out." She turned to Jimmy one final time. "I hope someday you reflect on what you revealed tonight. I hope you ask yourself why you felt so threatened by a woman speaking her truth." "I wasn't attacking you," Jimmy said weakly. "Yes, you were," Meghan replied, "and everyone saw it." With that, she walked off stage, dignified, unshaken, leaving behind a storm of outrage, divided loyalties, and a host only beginning to grasp the magnitude of what had just happened. As the cameras kept rolling, the producers scrambled to restore order. But it was too late. The damage was done. This was no longer a talk show. It was a flashpoint, a national moment about race, privilege, truth, and who gets to define the narrative. And there you have it. One of the most explosive celebrity interviews in modern television history. A clash that peeled back more than reputations. It exposed the raw, unresolved tensions simmering beneath the surface of American culture. Was Jimmy out of line? Did Meghan go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more behind-the-scenes breakdowns, and let me know which confrontation you'd like us to unpack next.